Hi, this is John with Flat 6 Motorsports, and we have John Gaydos from Soul Performance. We're going to review their 992.2 GTS. Let's get into it. Okay, so we're here with the 992.2 GTS that Soul Performance has. They've set it up with their full competition exhaust system. We're going to take it out on the road. We're actually up at the tail of the Dragon for the Ren Sport Dragon Rally. Really cool event. If you're a driving enthusiast, you should check it out. They do one in the summer, one in the fall. There's 280 Porsches here right now, so you have pretty much every model represented. And just a really good time with good roads, good driving, good people, and a cool event. But since we do have these great roads and this car, we wanted to provide a little review of the 992 GTS. So let's get it going here. So John, first of all, I imagine the development of an exhaust system for this new T-Hybrid platform had to be pretty different from past stuff.
More so than most would think. The Hybrid has a lot of new stuff on it that people haven't really seen in the development platform so far. This is why a lot of people have been waiting, let's say, 2-3 times longer for a product release than they have on previous models. You have a monitored particulate filter assembly in the midsection right after the turbo. And then you also have parts on these cars that are 3D metal printed right out the gate from factory. So you gotta work around those new monitoring systems, as well as scanning and sourcing 3D printed components in order to even start building prototypes to test and tune these cars out with new products. So that was one of the longest just entry phases into product development that we've ever had.
And so this is basically like the full competition exhaust system. Can you just give a color of what's on this car?
So after the turbo, this is a full system replacement. We went for as aggressive we can go while tuning has not come out yet. So this has a, after the turbo, a high flow catalytic converter that feeds into a full tuned length 3.5-inch exhaust system all the way out the back. While it is non-valved, we also spent a lot of time working on not just the tubing length, but also anti-drone technology. So we have a big drone canister that's tuned for low RPM frequencies. And, you know, as you can tell, just driving along here in normal mode, it's relatively sedate.
Yeah, that's for a full system. I was kind of thinking that you definitely hear a lot more rumble. And I had the opportunity to drive a GTS recently at Sebring with Porsche. And I think the first thing I thought about was it was just very muted, felt a little artificial. This definitely has more of your kind of traditional depth.
Yeah, absolutely. Now in normal mode, you don't get any of the charge pipe sounds, but as you go into the Sport and Sport Plus, what you'll also hear is our new vent to atmosphere charge pipe. So essentially a blow-off valve. So you hear more of that turbo pressure release as you're coming off throttle, and these cars are constantly monitoring turbo pressure going, charge pipe pressure, right? So you'll hear it even not off throttle purge a little bit here and there. So it's a very active experience just out of the intake system of this car.
Well, let's drop to sport mode. Definitely heard a little volume change there.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely has more of a sporty tone. Kind of reminds me a little bit actually of like the 992.1 at certain RPM, which I'm kind of surprised with, because the stock one that I drove, I just felt like the tone was very different from previous Porsches, and it just didn't have that familiarity.
It definitely doesn't. The stock exhaust has an unequal length manifold that's integrated into the turbo housing. So you can't really change that without changing the turbo, and until tuning's available, no one's going to be messing around with that. But what that means is you got a single turbo on one side that feeds across the car to a muffler that comes out the center. The closest thing we've ever seen to something like that is our old air-cooled turbo cars, right? But it's deep, it's rich, it's got this almost, let's call it similar to an AMG tone quality. So it's like a 930 turbo and an AMG had a love child, and here we are with the new GTS.
Yeah, that's one thing I really appreciate about the GTS driving is just with this T-Hybrid, it's so responsive out of turns. It just right here, I mean, you get an incredible amount of torque, more so than I would say in the 992 turbos with the VTGs. That's kind of the benchmark for me with kind of instant torque.
Yep.
But that E-Hybrid assist just kind of gives you that punch, and then the turbo spools, and it's a pretty cool experience. Let's drop it into Sport Plus now. So as we go up, it gets a little bit more suited for these roads, but there's definitely a lot more going on. I think that's probably my biggest takeaway with this car is a lot more noises. That was something I really missed with the car.
Yeah.
All I heard was tires at Sebring. And
yeah, tires are great and all, but I like to hear the character of the Porsche, and unfortunately, with Euro emissions and sound restrictions just getting worse and worse and worse every generation of car, it leaves a lot of low-hanging fruit for improvement over here in North America for the guys that really don't care about that.
Yeah, and it's great because one thing kind of with the T-Hybrid to me that was a disappointment is it in almost like an EV way, it kind of gives you that performance that you really want, you enjoy, but it just takes away from a little bit of that experience. And that's the thing about, I had a Taycan Turbo before, and it was fast. It was a fun car, but I just, every day when I'd get up and go to work with it, I would miss just that exhaust sound. So I'd gotten a Macan GTS, and I'm like, I just prefer the car so much more just for the simple fact I can hear some noise.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy when you have a Macan and you're like, hey, this has more experience than my 911. I think that's a problem. So, it's, and back to you were saying from a power equivalent with the 992 turbo, I think that's a point to go back to, because primarily, Billy and I were chatting last night, and we were like, the GTS out the gate is so responsive, it almost feels like maybe even like a 992.1 GTS fully tuned out in terms of responsiveness, but also top-end power. It's the closest we could find, to an equivalent power curve. But if you look at it, I mean, these cars make peak torque at like 2,500 RPM, and the power curve's just flat. It's rather surprising.
Yeah, even with this being an all-wheel drive model, for some reason the Carreras have always felt a little more nimble to me than the turbos, particularly in the front end. They just seem to have a little more, playfulness. They don't feel as substantial. It's probably some of the suspension tuning and setup for Porsche, but this doesn't feel super heavy. I mean, it feels a little bit heavier than, say, a Carrera T, but really, you get a lot of confidence out here, even in some of these tighter sections.
Yeah.
And the power, man, is it's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. We picked up with this full performance exhaust system, we call it, we netted anywhere between 30 to 50 wheel horsepower torque, depending on where you look at in the power curve. So it was, for a car with no software, we were very happy about that. The full 2.5 also lends 3.5 lends itself towards scalability in the future with software. It's about as big as you can go and start losing, how would you say, diminishing returns. If you go any bigger than that, it just really doesn't all that matter on these cars.
And you've been up here in the mountains driving this car for a few days. Obviously, I'm just kind of...
It's shocking how good this car is up here. We were running with Michael, and Michael's like, dude, on corner exit, I had nothing for you. Like, well, I'm also cheating because this car's it's too good. Michael, by the way, in a 981 with a 4.2 liter build. It's a nasty, nasty car. You'll see another feature on that too.
It's got just really good usable torque at most RPM. So this is a car to me that, I got a back road like this, you really don't need to ring it out as much. You can just kind of keep it in any gear, and you get that responsiveness. It feels fast. The torque is instant.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing how good of a car this is. And honestly, when I drove the stock one at Sebring, I didn't feel that way. I kind of was disappointed.
So were we when we first got the car. We drove it around, and I was just like, I don't have any interest. I'd rather have a 992T, built out and I'm sure you'd agree, those T's are a hell of a bang for the buck. But once it gets some of the character and the experience back, the car really seems to come alive.
Yeah, kind of almost tricks your mind into thinking it's not a hybrid to me, in a good way. And it's not that I'm like a hater of the hybrid, but there was a lot going on in the stock one, and, from my perspective, in kind of giving a lot of assistance and kind of simulated feel with some sound that just seemed a little unnatural. And, the all-wheel drive system, the one I drove had the rear steer, PDCC, so it had all the bells and whistles in terms of helping keep the car, moving around the racetrack. But performance-wise, I liked it, but it just kind of had a little bit of numbness to it. And this really, to me, brings the experience back. And I think the power, too, is something that this just feels like, honestly, like pretty up on power. I felt that the stock one, like it had really good instant torque with the, the hybrid assist. But then it sort of kind of tapered off at high RPMs, almost like it's running out of steam. And I do really like that sensation. It almost kind of reminded me of like a hot hatch or something.
Yeah.
Like a small turbo.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good description.
But I guess with this increased flow, you're kind of getting the benefits of, power delivery, up towards red line, which is, really nice.
When you see the stock, downpipe assembly that has the cat and that particulate filter assembly in it, and it looks like something off of a diesel truck. It's huge. It's the most restrictive piece of exhaust we've ever taken off a car. So that, coupled with the large tubing diameter out the back, it makes there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to uncork these things.
Yeah, no. Well, I will say I'm sort of now more of a believer in the GTS. I was a little disappointed at first, like I said, and then with this experience, especially with these roads, I mean,
we're on Hellbender.
Yeah.
How does it get any better than that? By the way, the Dragon, great, overrated. Hellbender, awesome.
Yeah, you have some areas where you can use that power, and you still have a tremendous amount of stability in the car. The chassis is very good.
Yeah.
What tires are out here, by the way?
Factory Goodyears.
Okay.
Which, credit where it's due, pleasantly surprised how good the Goodyears are. It's never put a foot wrong, honestly, the whole time, really. We were running pretty hard this weekend.
Yeah, this is quite a ride. I'd say you drove the car here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
12 hours down and 12 hours back.
That's one thing I was just thinking in my head is one of the things we pride ourselves on with the 992 platform at the Carrera is just kind of how usable of a package it is when you put bigger turbos and exhaust intercooler on it. You can still drive this on road trips, daily drive it, have phone conversations in the car, and it's still a very usable, compliant car. And this embodies that as well, where you're kind of getting the tuned GTS power from like the 992.1 version, but just enough to wake it up with this exhaust. And I know you guys are coming out with a valved version of this, but honestly, if you prefer sound, you probably get a little more at like the low RPM putting around, but it's not overwhelming. It's just a very clean note, and wakes it up to a point where it makes it worth driving.
Yeah. The valved version is going to be great for people that want an exterior volume reduction, but to keep it modular and mix and match with the stock downpipe and our downpipe, you're going to sacrifice some tubing diameter. So when tuning comes out, you're not going to have that same upside potential if power is a priority. But, with any of our developments, especially on a platform like this, which is a Grand Tourer, you got to keep in mind here that we might have guys that want to drive 12 hours like we just did. So even on our most aggressive system, we take the time to do development where you can go and take that long drive and really get out no worse for wear. So, this is probably the worst it could get in normal at low RPMs going up this hill, and we're still here having a comfortable conversation.
Yeah, definitely an all-around good system. This system, if you're interested, if you have a 992.2 GTS, is available at flat6.com. We'll put a link in the description. This is a really cool overall experience. I appreciate giving me the opportunity to drive the car. And if you have a 992.2 GTS, there's some good things in store for you. I'm not going to hate on the car as I initially did. This is actually a really good, fun car, especially if you come to roads like this.
Yep.
So appreciate you watching. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. It's info@flat6motorsports.com. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right. See you guys.